We have a youth seat, a youth director on our global board, but we had a vacancy at that time. So last year we roped in, as you all heard the word, Jehaan Kotwal from Bombay, who is a very young entrepreneur and heads a logistic company to step in and help us. He willingly agreed. So far we've called him as interim youth director. I request him to come forward and give us a report of what he has done, and then we'll go ahead and elect him on the board, because his name and nomination has been passed by the global board. I just have to put it as a formality in front of the annual general meeting. He'll give you about 5-10 minutes of a report of what he has done, and after we finish the annual general meeting, he and his young team would like you guys to stay back a little, because they want to have an interactive session with you all. So I request you all to do that also. But first, let's hear from Jehaan.
Thank you, Behrouz. And good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Bangalore chapter, for having us. I think, like Navalsa mentioned, that the youth needs to increase its participation. So I'm here to just give you a brief of what we've been doing for the last 6 months. Essentially, we started off after the Hong Kong Chamber, the AGM we had last year, and there this discussion was always ongoing as to how we could encourage more youngsters to participate. And with Xerxes's coffee meets that we had regularly, interestingly, I was also interested in moving on with a team of people, not just doing it alone. And that's where, luckily, we got a core group of 5 individuals, equally passionate, equally enterprising, and equally ambitious. And I think so far, in the last 6 months, the interest of our passion came through when we just decided to meet literally every week. Wednesday, Starbucks was our venue. We started focusing essentially on what the vision of the youth wing should be, where it should be going, and how can we make it sustainable. And I think so far we've had one really successful event, which was the speed networking event, which I'll talk about in a bit. But when we really started off, just to give you guys a perspective of where we were and what we were doing, is we wanted to understand really as to what are the youth looking for. Individually, we have our own perceptions of how each one thinks the youngsters in the Parsi community are. And a lot of them, especially seniors, have a very negative approach of what the youth are actually up to these days. And I think that has to really change first, because if you have that perception, that's the approach with which you will talk to the youngsters, that comes across not so in a positive aspect. So I truly encourage you all to just look at it in a more different angle, and I'm sure you will see a very interesting and young, very highly ambitious community that we have of youngsters. Coming down to 6 months prior, what exactly we did. And we went out and tried to understand what the youngsters were looking for. So we hosted a survey, and Facebook is our medium, as you all know. That's where we all are, always. And so that's where we did a survey and tried to understand what are the youngsters looking for and which priority. And so we came up with 5 verticals, which we believed the WZCC stands for. One of them being networking. The second one was mentoring. Third one was industry exposure. Fourth was motivational talks, which we have the leaders here encouraging us. And the fifth was incubation. And this is how the youngsters, we had about 100 participants globally actively giving us their ranking. So we got an understanding of what we should be focusing on as a group, and where we have to take this now to keep it sustainable. So the first event naturally was the speed networking event, which we had at Yamas. Very interesting, where we had almost 50 participants, everyone exchanging cards, moving quick. We had targeted 1 crore of business to be turned around, but luckily we touched just about 25 lakhs in the first week, and now most likely by next month we should be reaching about 50 lakhs, which I think deserves a round of applause in itself. And mind you, this is just the first event, and we're looking at having events every 2 to 3 months of different kinds, of course, and it's mostly to create value. So I truly believe that value has value only if its value is valued. And if we are here, there is a reason for which we all come to, at least not only some of us, of course, have come here to give, but most of us, interestingly, want to even take. But that's not the attitude with which the youngsters generally approach every situation. they're always interested in what am I getting. And I think that's essentially what mindset we're trying to change. We're trying to encourage them to realize that they first need to give, whether it's a contact, whether it's a business deal, whether it's just a professional friend-to-friend advice. So I think that's where we started, and thanks to Xerxes as the mentor for the youth wing for our core group, we had the first event. The next one we're having in Jan, and that is the networking bit. The rest 3 portions, which I would like to cover just a little bit quickly, is the second is mentoring. And like mentioned by Yasli sir as well, the Facebook page that we've started now will every week be hosting a mentor's profile in which any youngster globally who's on our group can see that, okay, this is the mentor that's available and would like to approach. And in that sense, we connect the two, give the CV across if the mentor would be interested to, mentee someone. And that's essentially how we want that program to run. And so we're going to have industry heads, and we've got almost 12 of the top of industry verticals. So whether it's real estate, we have the Rustamji Bamanirani. If it's food and beverage, we have Kainaz Messman, who's also secured a $20 million VC fund. So we have the best of the best giving the advice to the youngsters. And I think that really encourages youngsters to come on board, come to the WZCC and see it as a place of value, see it as a place of encouragement. That's the mentoring bit. We are looking at industry exposure, so I encourage all of you, if you have the space, to take in a few interns here and there, and I think that really would help us give some youngsters between the age group of 18 to 22 who are just trying to understand where they want to be, which area of vertical they would like to work. So if you have organizations of yours where you could give Parsi young children or youngsters internship portfolio space, we would like to facilitate that same process. With that, the final bit is the incubation, and I think that's where today's event I think truly stands out. And for the Bangalore chapter, this is also a very special thing because the financing, which is essentially the crux of any business, is here present now. And that availability, thanks to the WZOT and even the WZCC, now youngsters have the potential and even the encouragement to come here and say, okay, here's a place I can pitch my idea. Here's a place I could possibly get the right network and also possibly the good funding attached with it. So I think that is a huge, I think that deserves a round of applause in itself because it's absolutely phenomenal. When I've spoken to a lot of youngsters, especially over the last 6 months, there was always that, in the back of their mind, there was that, where does this lead to? And if people know that there's some kind of monetary outcome of this, that even though they get it or they don't, they at least are more proactive in trying to make their business plan. They come across more aggressively. There's a way where we could, if out of the 25 lakhs you spend 2 lakhs on a good business plan, you could get funding worth crores. And I myself have experienced that. So I know that we can actually achieve that in a bigger way, and this could facilitate into something far bigger. With that, I believe the next session, which we'll be having at the end, would be quite interesting as well, and we would love your participation. And thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to all of you.
Thank you, Jehaan. Thank you.